March 1941, Detroit, Michigan. The International Harvester Manufacturing Complex sprawled across 127 acres of industrial landscape. Inside Factory 7, engineers were completing something that seemed destined for obscurity. It was called the M3 half-track personnel carrier, a hybrid monstrosity that combined the front axle and steering of a truck with the tracked rear suspension of a tank, 6 rows of metal tracks instead of wheels. A canvas canopy stretched over the open cargo bed, mounted machine gun brackets bolted to the frame. It looked, quite frankly, like someone had made a terrible mistake during assembly. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. By June 1942, American factories had produced their first 2,000 half-tracks. By December 1943, production exceeded 41,000 units. Yet as these vehicles began arriving in European theatres of operation, German military intelligence dismissed them with barely concealed contempt. The reports were almost mocking in tone. The American half-track represents a fundamental misunderstanding of modern warfare. One Berlin intelligence summary concluded, "Neither truck nor tank, it sacrifices the speed of the former and the protection of the latter." German engineering, by contrast, provides purpose-built solutions for each tactical requirement. German planners had invested years developing the SD, KFZ, 10 and SD, KFZ, 11 light half-tracks with elegant engineering and purposeful design. These vehicles featured better armor plating, more sophisticated suspension systems, and superior load-bearing capacity. The American half-track looked like it had been assembled in a hurry by engineers who fundamentally misunderstood what a mechanized army required. What nobody predicted was that American inexperience with half-track design would lead them toward something far more valuable than German sophistication, something that worked under conditions German vehicles simply could not endure. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Major Wilhelm Hartmann commanded an armored reconnaissance company stationed near Rostock in northern Germany. In February 1942, he received his first briefing on American military vehicle production based on captured documents and surveillance reports. The photographs showed the half-track boxy, ungainly, with that ridiculous canvas top. Hartmann, a veteran of mechanized operations in Poland and France, found it almost insulting. His own vehicles were sleek, efficient, engineered with German precision. The SD, KFZ, '10 could traverse difficult terrain with surprising agility. The SD, KFZ, 11 carried substantial cargo loads. What role could the American half-track possibly fill that German vehicles could not handle better? "It looks like they assembled it from spare parts," Hartmann noted in a letter to his wife. The American approach to engineering has always been crude. They build things cheaply and then produce them in large quantities. This vehicle embodies everything wrong with American methodology. His assessment reflected the consensus among German military leadership. The Wehrmacht had won decisive victories through superior tactics, better trained soldiers, and more sophisticated equipment. American production capacity was irrelevant if American equipment was fundamentally inferior. This confidence lasted exactly until combat units began encountering the half-tracks in actual operations. November 1942 brought the invasion of North Africa. Operation Torch landed American forces in Algeria and Morocco, putting them into direct combat with Axis forces for the first time. Among the vehicles that came ashore in landing craft were thousands of half-tracks, their first major test under fire. German and Italian defenders got their first close look at the American vehicles they had dismissed so readily. The reality of combat revealed something intelligence analysts had completely missed. The half-track was not designed to be sophisticated. It was designed to survive. The vehicle weighed approximately 8,700 pounds. The engine, a Hall-Scott gasoline power plant producing 147 horsepower, could propel this considerable mass across terrain that would leave wheeled vehicles bogged down hopelessly. But it was the tracks themselves that proved revolutionary. American designers had essentially taken the reliable tank track and married it to a standard truck frame. The result was a vehicle that could cross soft sand, navigate deep mud, and climb slopes that stopped conventional vehicles dead. The canvas canopy that German engineers had dismissed as inadequate protection actually served multiple purposes. In the North African heat, it provided critical shade for the 14 soldiers it could carry. The open sides, which seemed like a glaring vulnerability, actually allowed rapid deployment of infantry. Soldiers could bail out sideways and forward, which meant that in an ambush situation, the half-track became not a death trap, but a vehicle that got men into combat positions fast. Captain Theodor Brenner was commanding a Panzer Grenadier platoon near Kasserine Pass when his unit captured its first intact American half-track. The vehicle had been abandoned when its crew bailed out during a German artillery barrage. Brenner ordered it examined carefully. The German mechanics who inspected it were surprised by what they found. The engine was elementary, almost crude in its design. Tolerances were loose compared to German power plants. The suspension system relied on simple leaf springs rather than the sophisticated torsion bar systems Germany favoured. The transmission was straightforward and rugged. Most tellingly, every component seemed designed for replacement rather than precision maintenance. Americans have built a machine for soldiers, not for engineers, one of Brenner's mechanics reported. Everything can be fixed with basic tools. There are no special parts, no intricate mechanisms. A soldier with minimal training could maintain this vehicle. Brenner decided to attempt running the half-track. Against standing orders, his unit used it for reconnaissance missions. Within a week, they had captured 2 more. By March 1943, Brenner's reconnaissance platoon had entirely replaced their German half-tracks with captured American vehicles. The performance difference in North African conditions was staggering. The SD, KFZ 11 struggled in deep sand. Its narrower track width and lighter construction meant it could become bogged down in conditions the American half-track handled effortlessly. The American vehicle's higher ground clearance meant it could traverse rocky terrain without damage. Its powerful engine meant it could maintain speed even when fully loaded with 14 soldiers and their equipment. But there was something else, something that German officers began noting in their dispatches with increasing frustration. When one of Brenner's captured half-tracks suffered mechanical failure, he could raid nearby American supply dumps and find replacement parts. When a German half-track broke down, replacement components had to be fabricated or shipped from Germany, a process that could take weeks. By April 1943, German intelligence headquarters in Berlin began receiving increasingly detailed reports about American half-track performance in North Africa. The reports contradicted earlier assessments so fundamentally that some officers suspected the source documents were fabricated or mistranslated. One report, forwarded by Major Klaus Reinhardt of the 10th Panzer Division, stated flatly, "The American M3 half-track outperforms our own light vehicles in cross-country conditions. German soldiers in captured vehicles report superior speed, greater cargo, capacity, and markedly improved reliability. Maintenance requirements heavily favor the American design due to part standardization and abundance of supply." Berlin's response was skeptical. Reinhardt was ordered to clarify whether he meant the American vehicles were merely adequate or genuinely superior. His reply was unambiguous. They are superior, not in sophistication or armor, but in practical capability under combat conditions. I recommend immediate investigation into increasing SD, KFZ, 11 production, or developing an American-style alternative. The investigation that followed revealed a horrifying truth about American production capacity. Intelligence analysts discovered that American factories had produced over 41,000 half-tracks by the end of 1943. Germany had produced approximately 7,500 half-tracks of all types during the entire war. The ratio was nearly 5, 1 inch America's favor, and American production was accelerating. More disturbing was the discovery that American production had achieved standardization that German industry could not match. Every American half-track was built to identical specifications. Parts manufactured in California would fit vehicles assembled in Michigan. This standardization had cascading effects on logistics, maintenance, and operational capability. German half-tracks came from multiple manufacturers using different designs and specifications. An SD, KFZ, 10 used different components than an SD, KFZ, 11. Replacement parts had to be sourced from specific manufacturers. Supply officers faced nightmares trying to maintain mechanically diverse fleets. July 1943 brought the invasion of Sicily. American forces, equipped with thousands of half-tracks, landed on the island's beaches in the opening assault. German defenders, expecting American mechanized forces to rely primarily on tanks and trucks, were unprepared for the sheer number of tracked vehicles the Americans deployed. The half-tracks proved particularly effective in Sicily's mountainous terrain. While German vehicles struggled on narrow roads winding through coastal mountains, American half-tracks maintained speed and mobility. They could climb grades that stopped conventional trucks. Their tracks provided traction on loose volcanic rock that would have immobilized wheeled vehicles. More importantly, the half-track's design made it ideal for moving troops rapidly through contested terrain. American commanders could load 14 soldiers into a half-track and move them across country that would require hours by foot. This meant American forces could concentrate troops faster than German defenders could react. Defensive positions that seemed secure could be flanked by rapid half-track movements. Colonel Ernst Sommer, commanding German forces defending the Catania sector, found his defensive plans collapsing under American mobility. American half-tracks, moving across terrain he had assumed impassable, repeatedly appeared behind his defensive lines, forcing hasty retreats and reorganizations. His after-action report noted in frustrated capital letters, "American mechanization provides tactical mobility we cannot match. Half-track vehicles move rapidly across terrain unsuitable for German transport. Defensive positions become untenable when enemy can concentrate forces from multiple directions simultaneously." When German forces retreated from Sicily across the Strait of Messina, they left behind hundreds of captured and destroyed American half-tracks. But they also left behind a new realization. Dismissing the American vehicle had been a catastrophic intelligence failure. The half-track was not sophisticated, but sophistication mattered far less than operational capability and mass production. By September 1943, German commanders actively sought captured American half-tracks. Colonel Hans von Steiner of the 29th Panzer Grenadier Division submitted an official request asking that his division be equipped entirely with captured American vehicles instead of German half-tracks. The request was extraordinary. German officers did not typically request American equipment over German-manufactured vehicles. Von Steiner's justification was blunt. Captured American half-tracks provide superior performance in all terrain conditions. Maintenance requirements are simplified due to standardized parts. Crews trained on American vehicles report superior handling characteristics. Request approval to equip 3 companies entirely with captured vehicles and use standard vehicles only for garrison duties. The request was denied on the basis of fuel consumption. German fuel supplies were increasingly constrained. American half-tracks, with their powerful Hall-Scott engines, consumed more fuel than German vehicles. High Command decided that maintaining German vehicles, despite their inferior performance, was more economical than operating American equipment that would drain limited fuel supplies. This decision revealed the fundamental strategic problem Germany faced. Even when forced to acknowledge American equipment superiority, Germany could not transition to that equipment because production and logistics systems were built around German specifications. By October 1943, German supply officers were actively raiding American depot areas to acquire spare parts for captured half-tracks. Some units maintained more captured American vehicles than German equipment. Maintenance crews were being specially trained on American vehicle operation and repair. The shift in attitude was complete, but it came too late to change strategic outcomes. What emerged from the combat reports reaching Berlin was a psychological reversal as stark as any in military history. German intelligence, which had dismissed the half-track as amateurish in 1942, was now requesting detailed technical specifications for captured vehicles. German engineers, who had presumed American engineering inferior, were studying American half-track design, looking for features that could be incorporated into German vehicles. Some proposed developing a completely new German half-track based on American principles. Others suggested accelerating production of vehicles already in service. All proposals required substantial resources and industrial capacity. Germany, by late 1943, was losing both. The bombing campaign against German factories was intensifying. Production of existing vehicles was declining. Introducing new designs was impossible. Germany would have to fight the remainder of the war with vehicles that German commanders now recognized as inferior to American alternatives. Sergeant Klaus Hoffmann, a maintenance officer with the 15th Panzer Division, kept a diary during the Sicily campaign. His entries charted the shifting attitude toward American equipment. The 15th of July, 1943. Captured 3 American half-tracks today. Vehicle appears crudely constructed. Nothing like German engineering. The 3rd of August, 1943. Half-tracks proving invaluable for reconnaissance. Speed superior to our own vehicles. Tracks handle volcanic terrain better than expected. The 22nd of August, 1943. Maintenance crew reports captured vehicle has been operational for 47 consecutive days with minimal repairs. German vehicle comparable would have required depot-level overhaul by now. The 12th of September 1943, officially requested that we be equipped with captured vehicles. Request denied. Fuel concerns apparently more important than tactical capability. The 1st of October 1943. We are fighting a war with inferior equipment because German industry cannot produce the quantity of superior vehicles that Americans manufacture casually. This realization is becoming widespread among officers. By November 1943, German High Command understood a truth that would have been unthinkable 1 year earlier. American industrial capacity had achieved something German engineering precision could not: a simple, reliable, standardized vehicle that could be mass-produced in quantities, that overwhelmed German alternatives. The half-track became a symbol of something larger and more troubling to German leadership. American methods, which German officers had dismissed as crude and unsophisticated, were actually proving more effective under real combat conditions than German precision and complexity. The half-track didn't win battles through brilliant design. It won through abundance, reliability, and standardization. America built so many half-tracks, maintained them so efficiently through standardized parts, and deployed them so flexibly that German forces found themselves outmaneuvered not by superior tactics, but by superior logistics and production. German soldiers, confronting this reality in North Africa and Sicily, began desperately seeking captured American half-tracks. Officers requested equipment transfers. Supply officers prioritized fuel allocation for American vehicles over German alternatives. Mechanics trained themselves on American designs. The consensus was unambiguous. Given the choice between German and American half-tracks, German soldiers preferred the American vehicle. This transformation from contempt to desperate desire would accelerate dramatically as the war moved into its final phases. But already by late 1943, German military leaders understood that they were not fighting American vehicles. They were fighting American industry. And American industry, it seemed, was an enemy that German sophistication could not overcome. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. December 1943. The Italian boot. The American armies, advancing northward through mountains and across rivers, found themselves in terrain that nullified much of German defensive positioning. Mountains that should have been impregnable became navigable when American commanders could move troops rapidly via half-track across mountain passes and around defensive lines. German forces defending the line south of Cassino discovered a tactical problem they had not anticipated. American mobility exceeded their capacity to establish coherent defenses. Half-tracks, moving supplies forward at speeds German logistics could not match, meant American forward positions were better supplied than German rear areas. Half-tracks, evacuating wounded rapidly, meant American casualties suffered lower mortality rates than German wounded receiving treatment from overstretched medical services. Half-tracks, providing mobile command centers with radio communications, meant American battalion commanders could coordinate unit movements across terrain in real time, while German officers relied on messengers moving by foot. By early 1944, the desperate German desire for captured half-tracks had crystallized into official policy. Wehrmacht supply commands issued directives specifically authorizing units to operate captured American vehicles. Maintenance training programs were established to ensure German mechanics could keep American equipment operational. Fuel allocation prioritization actually favored captured half-tracks over some German vehicles, a reversal that would have been incomprehensible to German planners 2 years earlier. But there was a problem that no amount of official authorization could solve. There simply weren't enough captured vehicles to equip German forces adequately. Colonel Friedrich Reinhardt commanded the 7th Mechanized Infantry Regiment stationed in central Italy. By March 1944, his regiment had captured 14 American half-tracks through combat operations and abandoned equipment. Reinhardt immediately put them into service, replacing German SD, KFZ, 11 vehicles that were mechanically worn and consuming excessive fuel. The difference in operational capability was immediately apparent. His reconnaissance patrols, previously limited to a range of 40 kilometers before requiring resupply, could now conduct operations extending 60 kilometers or more. His supply convoys, previously requiring 3 vehicles to transport equivalent cargo, could accomplish the same work with 2 half-tracks. His wounded evacuation capability increased dramatically. The half-track's interior could accommodate 4 stretchers plus a medical orderly, compared to the cramped space of German ambulances. Reinhardt submitted a formal request for authorization to equip his entire regiment with captured American half-tracks. The request worked its way through bureaucratic channels, ultimately reaching Army Group headquarters in early April. The response, when it came, revealed the strategic constraints Germany faced. Berlin acknowledged that American half-tracks provided superior performance. Authorization was granted to continue operating captured vehicles, but production replacements were impossible. Germany could not manufacture American vehicles. Existing German production was declining due to bombing campaigns targeting German factories. Any captured half-track lost to combat or mechanical failure would not be replaced. This meant German commanders faced an impossible calculation. American half-tracks were superior but finite. Every captured vehicle represented 1 fewer American transport, but also represented a resource that, once lost, could never be replaced. German supply officers began hoarding captured vehicles, restricting their use to essential missions and keeping them in rear areas rather than front-line service where combat losses would be inevitable. While German commanders desperately sought to capture American half-tracks, American factories were manufacturing new vehicles at rates that German military planners found almost incomprehensible. American production had accelerated beyond 1,943 levels. By mid-1944, combined American factory output exceeded 5,000 half-tracks monthly. If one was lost to combat, 3 more arrived at supply depots from American factories. German intelligence, monitoring American production through various surveillance and captured document analysis, calculated that American industrial capacity could replace every half-track in the European theatre within 6 weeks through domestic production alone. Germany, by contrast, had no capacity to manufacture American vehicles whatsoever. The asymmetry was so severe that it fundamentally altered military strategy. American commanders could plan operations assuming unlimited half-track availability. Damaged vehicles could be abandoned rather than retrieved. Units that lost vehicles could be re-equipped with new vehicles within days. Supply depots were stocked with such abundant spare parts that maintenance became largely a matter of component replacement rather than careful repair. German commanders, forced to operate captured vehicles despite policy preferences, had to plan assuming that every half-track would eventually be lost and could not be replaced. Some units restricted captured half-tracks to non-combat duties, supply transport, rear area movement, personnel evacuation, reserving combat roles for German vehicles that could more easily be repaired using available resources. This forced the Germans into using inferior vehicles for critical tactical missions, because those vehicles could be maintained with German parts and German logistics infrastructure. American half-tracks, superior in every tactical sense, were relegated to support roles because the German logistics system could not sustain them in combat service. June 1944 brought the invasion of France. Operation Overlord landed American and British forces on Normandy beaches, with American forces bringing approximately 8,000 half-tracks in the initial assault phases. German commanders defending Normandy, already demoralized by American air superiority and artillery advantage, suddenly found themselves facing mechanized mobility that transcended anything they had previously encountered. American half-tracks, landing in the opening waves, provided immediate transport for assault troops. They moved soldiers from beach positions into prepared defensive areas faster than German counterattacks could organize. They evacuated casualties so rapidly that American combat efficiency remained high even after days of continuous fighting. They provided mobile command centers that allowed coordination across divisional areas. Most critically, American half-tracks moved supplies forward at rates that allowed American frontline units to maintain sustained combat operations. German frontline troops, dependent on supply lines stretched across recently conquered territory, found their logistics system struggling to keep pace with American consumption rates. American soldiers had ammunition, food, and medical supplies in abundance. German soldiers rationed everything. General Klaus Vogel, commanding a panzer corps defending the Normandy sector, submitted an after-action report in July 1944 that expressed his despair with unusual frankness. American mechanization provides tactical and logistical advantages that German forces cannot counter through tactical innovation or superior officer leadership. Every American battalion has sufficient half-tracks to maintain complete mobility. German battalions lack sufficient vehicles to move more than one company at a time. This fundamental disparity in transportation capacity has created a situation where American forces achieve tactical concentrations, while German forces remain dispersed and unable to concentrate rapidly. The half-track is not a combat vehicle, it is a logistics vehicle. Yet, by providing logistics that German forces cannot match, it has become the most militarily significant vehicle on the battlefield. Vogel requested permission to establish a special unit dedicated entirely to capturing American half-tracks. His request was approved, but the results were disappointing. American forces were moving too rapidly and losing too few vehicles. Most American half-tracks, when damaged, were destroyed by their crews before German forces could capture them. Occasionally intact vehicles were captured, but the rate of capture never approached the rate of consumption in American operations. By August 1944, German defenders in Normandy had captured approximately 220 American half-tracks over 2 months of intensive combat. American forces in the same period had received approximately 12,000 replacement and new half-tracks through supply lines from England and America. The ratio was incomprehensible to German commanders. For every captured half-track, Americans received 54 new ones. The Battle of the Bulge, launched in December 1944, represented Germany's last major offensive operation in Europe. German planners hoped to achieve surprise and rapid penetration of Allied lines, creating enough confusion to force negotiated peace. The operation required rapid German movement through difficult terrain in winter conditions. Oberfuhrer Hans Dieter, commanding a Panzer Grenadier division, specifically requested that his unit be equipped with every captured American half-track available. His division, specially trained for rapid breakthrough operations, would be spearheading the offensive. German commanders approved the request and began collecting captured vehicles from rear areas. German supply officers, scouring occupied territories and rear area depots, managed to locate approximately 150 captured American half-tracks. The vehicles were concentrated and assigned to Dieter's division. For the first time in the war, a major German combat unit was being equipped substantially with captured American equipment. Dieter's mechanics prepared the vehicles meticulously. Engine oil was changed, tracks were inspected, weapons mounts were tested. German soldiers were trained specifically on American vehicle operation. Drivers practiced maneuvering in the dark. Radio operators familiarized themselves with American radio systems. The offensive began with German half-tracks in support not as primary combat vehicles, but as transport and supply movement platforms. For precisely 3 days, the captured half-tracks performed flawlessly. They moved German assault troops forward faster than supporting infantry could advance on foot. They moved ammunition forward to support German artillery. They evacuated German wounded from front-line positions. German commanders, experiencing for the first time the operational benefits of American half-track abundance, recognized that they were finally seeing the battlefield through German mechanized forces operating at something approaching American capability. Then American air superiority reasserted itself. Once German forces broke into open terrain, Allied fighter bombers achieved targeting dominance. American half-tracks, with their minimal armor and exposed cargo beds, were particularly vulnerable. German half-tracks, more heavily armored though mechanically inferior, withstood air attack somewhat better. But both American and German vehicles suffered losses that accelerated as the battle progressed. By day 7 of the offensive, German forces had lost approximately 110 of the 150 captured half-tracks to air attack, ground combat, or mechanical failure. German supply officers had no means of replacing these losses. Unlike American forces, Germany could not simply requisition new vehicles from factories and receive them within days. Once a half-track was lost, it was gone permanently. Dieter's division, which had begun the offensive with substantial half-track support, found itself by the second week operating with only 40 functional captured vehicles. These were immediately restricted to rear area operations, supply movement and casualty evacuation because the rate of loss in forward positions was unsustainable. The offensive collapsed not due to tactical failure, but due to logistics failure and air superiority. German forces, unable to maintain supply lines at American rates and unable to replace vehicle losses, gradually lost momentum. American forces, receiving constant stream of replacement vehicles and ammunition from logistical pipeline, regrouped and counterattacked successfully. What became apparent to German commanders after the Bulge failed was that the half-track had become symbolic of a fundamental truth they could no longer deny. Germany was losing because America had built an industrial machine that German engineering and tactical innovation could not overcome. Individual half-tracks were superior or inferior based on specific design characteristics, but the decisive factor was not design. It was production volume, standardization, and logistics. American half-tracks were abundant. German commanders could plan operations assuming vehicles would be available for any requirement. American half-tracks were standardized. Parts were universally available. Mechanics could maintain them with minimal specialized knowledge. American half-tracks were supported by logistics that continuously supplied replacement vehicles and spare components. German half-tracks, German trucks, German tanks, all of them suffered from the opposite problem. They were produced in limited quantities. They were manufactured by different companies using different specifications. Replacement parts were difficult to source. Logistics were strained and becoming more strained as the war progressed. The captured American half-tracks that German forces were operating became increasingly valuable as the war wore on toward 1945, not because they were tactically superior in combat, but because they represented a temporary window into operating forces equipped at American abundance levels. When a German unit received captured half-tracks, it experienced briefly what American commanders experienced continuously: unlimited vehicle availability. Lieutenant Joachim Hoffmann, commanding a mechanized platoon that received 6 captured American half-tracks in March 1945, recorded his impressions. For 10 days, my platoon operated with superior mobility. 6 half-tracks allowed me to move my entire force rapidly across terrain. I had sufficient transport to evacuate casualties immediately. I could conduct reconnaissance missions with confidence that my vehicles would perform reliably. On the 11th day, 3 vehicles were destroyed by air attack. On the 12th day, I had only 2 vehicles remaining. We were forced to abandon American equipment and revert to foot movement. During those 10 days, I experienced warfare as Americans experience it. During the remaining days, I experienced German warfare. The difference is more than tactical, it is existential. By April 1945, Germany was essentially defeated. Soviet forces were advancing from the east, American and British forces from the west. German formations were fragmented, disorganized, and desperately attempting to survive rather than achieve tactical objectives. Captured American half-tracks, which had been so desperately desired just months earlier, were now simply another piece of abandoned equipment littering the landscape. German soldiers, when they managed to capture new half-tracks, used them for personal escape rather than military operations. A half-track, with its superior speed and cross-country capability, offered better odds of successfully evading advancing Allied forces than slower vehicles. Individual soldiers and small groups of German personnel sought captured American half-tracks for the same reason American commanders had valued them throughout the war. They provided mobility that other vehicles could not match. German prisoners interrogated after the war were asked to assess American military equipment. The conversations repeatedly turned to half-tracks. Wehrmacht officers, who had commanded units equipped with captured vehicles, consistently ranked half-tracks among the most militarily significant American achievements, not because they were the most powerful or most sophisticated weapons, but because they enabled everything else. General Major Werner Schiffer, captured in May 1945 and interrogated by American intelligence officers, provided one of the most comprehensive German assessments of American equipment advantage. The American half-track is not the most impressive American weapon. Your tanks are more powerful, your artillery is more effective, your aircraft are more advanced. But the half-track is the most important. It provides the logistics that make your superior weapons effective. It provides the mobility that makes your tactics possible. It provides the supply lines that make your soldiers better equipped than ours. We could have defeated better tanks, we could have survived better artillery, we could have endured more powerful aircraft, but we could not overcome the fundamental advantage that American half-tracks represent: the ability to sustain continuous operations through constant supply and rapid mobility. Germany lost the war not because German soldiers were inferior or German tactics were wrong, but because American industry produced half-tracks at rates we could not compete with. American logistics maintained them with standardization we could not match, and American commanders possessed vehicles in such abundance that they could plan operations in ways German commanders could not imagine. The half-track story reveals something profound about military power that transcends specific weapons systems or tactical innovations. Germany entered the war with confidence in technical superiority. German engineering, German precision, German sophistication would overwhelm crude American industry and hastily assembled American equipment. What German planners failed to anticipate was that American crudeness was actually a deliberate engineering choice. American designers, unburdened by the assumption that vehicles must be precisely engineered, chose instead to build vehicles that could be mass-produced, easily maintained, and readily replaced. This approach seemed unsophisticated to German engineers who valued precision and elegance. In combat conditions, American pragmatism proved superior to German sophistication. A half-track that could be assembled quickly, maintained easily, and replaced readily was more valuable than a half-track that was more precisely engineered but slower to manufacture, difficult to maintain, and impossible to replace. The half-track epitomized this fundamental difference in approach. Germany built superior half-tracks in the SD, KFZ, series vehicles that showed greater engineering refinement. America built abundant half-tracks vehicles that appeared crude but could be produced in overwhelming quantities with efficient logistics. By mid-1944, German commanders understood this reality completely. They recognized that they were not fighting superior American vehicles. They were fighting American industrial capacity. They were fighting American logistics networks. They were fighting American organizational efficiency. These were not things that tactical brilliance or superior officer leadership could overcome. The desperate German desire to capture American half-tracks to operate the same vehicles. American commanders possessed in abundance represented an unconscious acknowledgement that the war was being decided not by who had the best vehicles, but by who had enough vehicles to sustain continuous operations at maximum intensity. American factories continued producing half-tracks until May 1945, when Germany surrendered. Total American half-track production during the war exceeded 41,000 units. Germany produced fewer than 8,000 half-tracks of all types combined. The ratio of approximately 5-to-1 told the strategic story more accurately than any tactical analysis. What the half-track demonstrated, across every theatre of operation from North Africa through Sicily to Italy and France and into Germany itself, was a truth that German military leadership could not escape. Industrial capacity itself is a form of military power. A nation that can produce vastly more of something, even something crude and unsophisticated, will eventually overwhelm a nation that produces fewer, more refined versions. German soldiers who laughed at American half-tracks in 1941 were, by 1945, desperately seeking to operate the same vehicles they had dismissed. This transformation reflected not a change in the vehicles themselves, but a change in understanding. American power was not located in individual weapons systems or tactical innovations. It was located in the American capacity to produce, standardize, and sustain equipment in quantities that transcended German industrial capability. The half-track had not changed. German soldiers had simply learned, through bitter experience in combat conditions, that sophistication was less important than abundance, that precision mattered less than reliability, and that industrial capacity could be a more decisive weapon than any individual piece of military equipment. By the time that lesson was learned, it was too late for Germany to apply it. American factories would continue producing half-tracks until victory was achieved, representing the triumph not of superior engineering, but of superior industrial organization and production capacity, the true winning advantage of the Allied war effort. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.